Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Do you think it's possible that Epstein was killed?
Oh, sure, it's possible. Oh, sure, it's possible. Oh, sure, it's possible. Oh, sure, it's possible. I mean, I don't really believe. I think he probably committed suicide. A lot of people think that he was killed. He knew a lot on a lot of people. He knew a lot on a lot of people. He knew a lot on a lot of people. He knew a lot on a lot of people.
I'm collecting stupid little boys. Stupid little boys? You know, the disobedient ones what play hooky from school. Oh. And I takes them to Pleasure Island.
Pleasure Island.
Pleasure Island? But the law. Suppose they... No, there's no risk. They never come back.
Jeffrey Epstein ain't the only island. Think about that. They do horrible things together so they don't snitch against each other, and they're rich so they hold each other accountable. If you say something, I'm gonna say something, and everything comes down.
Any comments on the alleged allegations of your connection with Jeffrey Epstein?
The closer you look into it, I mean, the Attorney General of the United States, your Attorney General, clearly lied about the Epstein death.
Yeah,
and
he was.
Why?
He was certainly. It wasn't well done. They had no cameras. They had no anything. Everybody was sleeping, and you know, a case could be made.
I mean, the Attorney General of the United States, your Attorney General, clearly lied about the Epstein death.
Yeah,
and
he was.
Why?
He was certainly. It wasn't well done. They had no cameras. They had no anything. Everybody was sleeping, and you know, a case could be made. 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 A case could be made.
Breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released by my office. What you're going to see, hopefully tomorrow, is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information. But it's pretty sick what that man did, along with his co-defendant.
The Attorney General, you recall last night, called it breaking news. She promised that we would get the Epstein files today, and while that turned out technically to be true, what we've seen so far, critics have argued tonight, really hasn't lived up to the dramatic billing. Now, we began the day with somewhat high expectation, having seen some influencers with so-called Epstein file folders. But that began to fizzle just a bit because we really didn't get a lot of new information. So once we saw that, we wondered, what about the Attorney General's? Was she holding back? Well, she actually wrote a letter, Laura, to the FBI Director, Kash Patel, suggesting that the FBI's New York office, which collected material from the SDNY, that's the Southern District of New York, it seemed to be, for lack of a better description, stonewalling, holding back key materials. She actually wrote a letter, Laura, to the FBI Director, Kash Patel, suggesting that the FBI's New York office, which collected material from the SDNY, that's the Southern District of New York, it seemed to be, for lack of a better description, stonewalling, holding back key materials.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
And the Trump administration is committed to truth and to transparency. That's why the Attorney General and the FBI Director pledged at the President's direction to do an exhaustive review of all of the files related to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and his death. And they put out a memo in conclusion of that review.
This memo says the Trump administration has conducted an exhaustive review of the investigative holdings related to Jeffrey Epstein. They have found the same thing that officials in New York and the Biden administration found back in 2023. Nothing to see here. And the Trump DOJ and FBI said, consistent with prior disclosures, Epstein harmed more than 1,000 victims. The only documents that have not been disclosed to the public are being withheld to protect the victims. The FBI says those documents did not expose any additional third parties to allegations of illegal wrongdoing. The FBI memo goes on to say their systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties.
So what happened to the Epstein client list that the Attorney General said she had on her desk?
Well, I think if you go back and look at what the Attorney General said in that interview, which was on your network on Fox News.
Got the quote.
Go ahead.
John Roberts said, DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? And she said, it's sitting on my desk right now to review.
Yes, she was saying the entirety of all of the paperwork, all of the paper in relation to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. That's what the Attorney General was referring to, and I'll let her speak for that.
Look, I don't know what to believe anymore. Okay, can you just declassify something?
The Justice Department also releasing more than 10 hours of purported footage, which they say supports the medical examiner's finding Epstein died by suicide while in custody in 2019. The video allegedly shows the view from across Epstein's cell door in a Manhattan prison, indicating no one entered the area the night he died.
A full minute is missing from that video. Watch as the timestamp jumps from 11:58 and 58 seconds to 12 a.m. and 1 second. What happened at 11:59 p.m.? That has still not been cleared up.
First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive. The video was not conclusive. The video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every year, every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999.
Breaking news, Wired has examined the EXIF data from the raw, in quotes, because it has likely been modified according to Wired magazine's analysis of the metadata attached to this video file. It is not a direct export from the prison surveillance system. The footage was modified, likely using Adobe Premiere Pro.
A special send-off for the former head of the FBI's New York field office. And there he is. Dozens of people were waiting outside the agency's headquarters in Lower Manhattan today as James Dennehy left the building.
Who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book?
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
Oh, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI. The FBI airmailed into that operation and said, this is not getting out. Because they do that because this is another government gangster operation. All these local law enforcement communities get funding from the DOJ and FBI for local programs. And if you don't cooperate, you're not getting your $1 million for this, and you're not getting and that's a lot of money to these local districts. That's how they play the game. That's why you don't have a Black Book.
But the Black Book, it's not just sitting. I mean, that's Hoover power times 10.
And to me, that's a thing I think President Trump should run on. On day one, roll out the Black Book.
So you may be wondering, okay, after all that, Kevin, what do we have? Well, so far we do have 7 flight logs. We have an Epstein contact book. We have a masseuse list, which strangely was redacted. Now, I should add this as well, Laura. Many of the names that we saw on the flight logs, at least so far, mirrored some of the names that we've seen before. There was obviously a criminal action that involved Ghislaine Maxwell. Some of the names on that flight log list, we've already seen those before. But what was interesting so far tonight, and I'm still going through it, we did see a few names in that contact book I told you about. Among them, Michael Bloomberg, Alec Baldwin, and former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair.
Who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book.
FBI.
But who? That is I mean, there's.
Oh, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
Well, the Epstein Black Book, like on day one.
On day one, roll out the Black Book.
So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to get, I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
I'm telling you, don't trust anyone, me included. We don't bring receipts, throw it out the window.
This was a concocted interview that they both knew she was going to ask him that question.
Yeah.
Exactly. I can tell what you're thinking. I think the same thing.
So why?
They're trying.
Why?
Because they promised that they were going to release all the information on Epstein, which means the Mossad, Israeli intelligence, child rape, so they can blackmail our politicians. If they released all the info, it leads directly to Israel.
Epstein was a CIA Mossad asset that was recruited and was doing a blackmail operation. I think that's crystal clear. No question about it. So
pretends to be the party guy, just like Diddy.
Drugs,
cameras, drugs.
The CIA, as part of MKUltra, at Operation Climax, where they would lure Zhongs in with drugs and prostitutes, and then this drunk CIA schmuck would sit on the opposite of a two-way mirror and take notes on what, just evil, wicked stuff. And that's what they're using Epstein for, was blackmail operations. And they got some pretty high-level people snared into that.
He knew a lot on a lot of people.
He was a spy. He was not just some random pedophile. This is a matter of national security. And all the blackmail that he collected, much of the fruits of his operations, are still in play. And I'm still waiting for a convincing argument that his primary employer was someone other than Israeli military intelligence. But we are talking about a whole network, vast enough and powerful enough to hand cash an empty box of official FBI files that show nothing, despite the fact that we know the FBI confiscated blackmail tapes from his mansion that contained recordings of many of these powerful people engaging in sexual acts with minors. We know that Epstein kept trophies like a large painting of Bill Clinton wearing a blue dress.
That painting is like, I got you, bitch. That's what that is.
Oh, right.
You got a president who was on the flight logs 26 times with Epstein, and you got that guy in a fucking dress in your house.
Oh, now you kind of control a president.
Holy shit, dude.
Holy shit. It's
that's
crazy.
100% what they were doing.
That is so crazy to think about. Like a president who is being extorted, the president of the United States being extorted, that you are now you are just a puppet.
Everybody in politics has a vice that's much worse than alcoholism, is the way that I put it. But we
release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing. We can go down that rabbit hole. Everybody in politics has a vice that's much worse than alcoholism, is the way that I put it. But we
release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
I agree with you that all of this information should be released. And we should get real answers on what happened to Jeffrey Epstein and any of the high-level political people that he was involved with. All of that should be open to the public. It should be absolutely transparent. And, I don't see why any of those records would have any redactions in them. Why would we be hiding that from the American public? I agree with you that all of this information should be released.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there.
A lot of phony stuff in there. You can put anything in a file, say anything about anybody. By the way, just for the record, asking a 17-year-old masseuse if she's planning on staying in the United States, that's a legitimate question.
Thursday night, you're going up the escalator? I'm going to be dating her in 10 years. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so.
These documents were so slow to come out. Human trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar business in this country. Human trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar business in this country. Human trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar business in this country.
My favorite moment was when the head of the FBI, Kash Patel, found out Elon accused Trump of being on the Epstein list live while podcasting.
Does he know that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files? Or does he have access to the Epstein files?
I don't know how he would, but I'm just staying out of the Trump Elon thing. That's way outside my lane.
What the are they doing?
I know my lane, and that ain't it.
Not your lane? Aren't you literally in charge of the Epstein files? I know my lane. I'm just a guy in charge of law enforcement domestically. Conspiracies, crimes, cover-ups.
It hides in plain sight. Epstein was hiding in plain sight. We all knew about him. We all knew what he was doing. But we had no one that was, legal aspect that would go after him. They were afraid of him. For whatever reason, they were afraid of him.
So the only other explanation that I can think of, again, maybe you've got another, is that intel services are at the very center of this story, U.S. and Israeli, and they're being protected. I think that seems like the most plausible.
That's the most obvious. If you have a history of this, there have been multiple documented cases of pedophilia inside of the CIA perpetrated by CIA officers, documented that in many of those cases, I believe over a dozen cases, this was a BuzzFeed news piece years back, where the CIA specifically did not want to prosecute those individuals in federal court for fear that they would reveal sources and methods if they were pulled into open court, and they basically just made it go away.
I ask this question now, the more I learn, there just always seems to be this connection between the CIA and the Mossad. And I'm going, is it just
no?
They're the same organization. I think the more you look back into history, and it's always somehow the CIA and the Mossad is there on the day that JFK gets shot. We learn about like MLK. We learn about 9/11, and I'm just going, okay, why does it seem like there's a union here, a marriage here?
Mossad is like the sister of the CIA. They're joined at the hip, kind of like Siamese twins. And they use each other for intel and operations and things like that. They are extremely close and in an extremely sensitive relationship. Oh, yeah.
And this it totally explains what Epstein was doing. And also Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, when he died, and didn't he die rather mysteriously? I'm not sure.
He fell off. He found dead off his yacht floating in the water. They claimed it was a heart attack.
Of course.
Just when he was coming under scrutiny for arms dealing and connections with the CIA and being a Mossad agent, actually a double agent with Mossad and KGB.
A ton of Mossad agents, and I think a former prime minister of Israel attended his funeral. So it's like, guys, hey, maybe
it's like, it's very difficult that they find out the hard way to cover up the truth, because it's going to leak out, somewhere.
Her father was a famous MI6 Mossad spy that reportedly used sex operatives to control people. He died being thrown off a yacht in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And, of course, she got caught in that farmhouse on the East Coast, and she was really the pimp over Epstein in a giant sex network ring over scientists that they were compromising so they could control not just government but industry and science. And so that was the master blackmail operation they were running. Yeah, her dad was the biggest publisher in England and also the biggest owner of private TV stations in England. And when he died, it turned out he was a front, basically, for intelligence networks.
We know that he was close friends in some form with the former prime minister of Israel and the former head of Israeli military intelligence. We know that he was friends with just about everyone else in his day, from the heads of the world's biggest tech companies and banks to many of the biggest names in Hollywood to former and also current presidents of the United States.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Jeffrey Epstein was just the tip, the iceberg tip. That was just a little.
I can imagine if he's one player, then there has to be a lot more, right? There's not just the only one, so let's be honest.
Exactly. How did Jeffrey Epstein make his money? Nobody knows how the he made his money. How you think he made his money?
Oh, no, wait. Wasn't he with he worked for somebody. Who did he work for?
Not the much money he had. He had to be selling kids. Duh. Why do you think he had his madame, whatever her name is?
Giselle.
She
Yeah.
was literally grabbing the little girls, boom, boom, twisting their brain, manipulating them, bringing them to the island, selling them to politicians and whoever you want.
Miss Maxwell walked me down to his room and explained whatever happens, you keep to yourself.
She tells me that she recruits 3 girls a day.
She was directing the activities that were going on there.
It was young girls against rich, powerful, connected people.
She groomed me to walk myself to the home of a predator willingly. If it were not for her, I would not have been abused.
I was being raped every single day, sometimes for 3 times a day. When Ghislaine herself, by her own hand, forced me into Jeffrey Epstein's room to be raped. I spent the last 17 years trying to get some form of justice, trying to put together a life for myself, and I haven't been able to do that. If the FBI and the governmental institutions listened to Maria Farm in 1996, I wouldn't have been raped. This was an international sex trafficking ring that trafficked hundreds of children and young women into the thousands.
Jane Doe talks about how when she was 15, she went on a school field trip to New York City where she met a recruiter who brought her to Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. This recruiter said that the mansion belonged to a benevolent billionaire who would help her make her dreams come true. Now, obviously, that sounds amazing for a 15-year-old girl, especially if you're from a small town and you've never seen a mansion or been to New York City before. So she went to this mansion, she had her photo taken, and she was given an iPod Touch. Apparently that was something that they did with young girls. They would give them gifts to gain their trust and then take down their information to be able to contact them later for longer trips. Jane Doe gets back home from the field trip, and sometime later she gets a phone call. It's from one of Epstein's representatives inviting her on a trip. They pitch it to her family as an event hosted for extraordinary young girls and that this would be an opportunity of a lifetime. They tell her parents that she'll be in good care, that this billionaire will take care of all expenses, and that she would be with other young girls. Fast forward, she gets an invitation to fly on the Lolita Express with Jeffrey Epstein himself and a bunch of young girls, and they're headed towards New Mexico. They get to this mesa in New Mexico, which has nothing around it except for this lavish mansion. And obviously, as a young woman, her alarm bells are ringing. She's beginning to feel uncomfortable knowing that there is literally nothing around her, and that she doesn't have the option to leave if she wanted to. This is where the grooming starts. This is where the assault happens.
In Epstein's case, it wasn't just Ghislaine Maxwell recruiting girls in Florida, because in New York, many of Epstein's survivors were introduced to him through other girls. When you're being groomed, you don't realize what's happening. For me, it wasn't until many years later, after Jeffrey's death, that I began meeting other survivors. So many of us have been trafficked under the guise of auditions, where we were excited, flying to LA to meet big directors or producers. Only later did we realize that so many of us had been sent to the same men at the same time for the same roles. And each of these auditions ended up in the same way, with sexual advances, unwanted touching, and outright assaults. As I shared my full story in court hearings and depositions, the bigger picture started to unfold. The same Hollywood names kept resurfacing, and only then did we realize the vast web that Epstein had built, not just for himself, for many, many other powerful men.
Had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. This is a stupid story. This is a stupid story.
And I takes him to Pleasure Island.
Pleasure Island.
Pleasure Island?
Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew, and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will, that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton. We had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up.
The only solace for me is that when a group of people who've experienced trauma of this kind come together united against a common enemy, there's a very special bond between us all.
A painful bond shared among these 6 women sitting together for the first time for an exclusive interview with NBC News.
I find it very comforting to be here.
Marika Chartouni, Anushka DeGiorgio, and Rachel K. Benavidez sharing their stories about Epstein for the first time on television.
I think the nature of this kind of abuse means that you're conditioned to be silent, to be isolated, secretive, and shameful.
I feel like, it was a big game for him, and we were the pieces of his game. And you're like, I'm just not going to say anything because that's what he told me to do.
Virginia Roberts-Jufrey says Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell recruited her one summer when she was working as a locker room attendant at Mar-a-Lago. In her first broadcast interview, Virginia tells NBC News what she has previously alleged in court filings, that Epstein directed her to also have sex with a number of powerful men, among them Britain's Prince Andrew.
He was an abuser. He was a participant.
Virginia says she was 17 when this photo was taken with the prince in Maxwell's London townhome, next to the bathroom where she says he sexually abused her.
What happened? The first time in London, I was so young. Ghislaine woke me up in the morning and said, "You're going to meet a prince today." I didn't know at that point that I was going to be trafficked to that prince.
It looks like a temple, and that's what Epstein calls it, his temple. It was on the most isolated part of the island. There are rumors circulating that he conducted sacrifices in there. That's where the children were taken for SA or to be killed.
Get him out of here. Get him out of here. Go home to your mom, darling. Go home.
So this is Richard Kahn, a longtime associate of Jeffrey Epstein's. He was his accountant and the executor of Epstein's estate. So the day after Jeffrey Epstein takes his own life in prison, Richard Kahn shows up to his house. He's obviously wearing a disguise trying to hide who he is. And journalists who were sitting outside of the home just happened to capture this on camera. Richard walked into Jeffrey Epstein's home with someone who appeared to be a friend of Jeffrey Epstein's. They rushed into the house. They were in there for about 45 minutes. And then Richard came out of the home with this bag that he didn't bring in. It was a blue bag filled with a bunch of different items and things from the home. Now, to this day, it's still unknown exactly what was in that bag and why he had to get into the house that quickly to retrieve all of this. Was it recordings of celebrities and politicians? Was it the lost Epstein tapes? Was it evidence that could incriminate his whole ring of co-conspirators? I guess that's just something we will never know.
On Nadia Marcinko, someone who is known as Epstein's global girl. Following the release of the explosive court documents, she has vanished. She disappeared just as a New York court unveiled details of Epstein's extensive sex trafficking network. Now, for the unversed, this network allegedly involved high-profile figures, including 2 former US presidents, a member of the UK royal family, and several celebrities. He bought Slovakia-born Nadia, then known as Nadia Marcinkova, from her family, who were settled in Yugoslavia. After years of abuse, the underage victim, Nadia, according to reports, was pushed to become an abuser within Epstein's network. Nadia Marcinko now faces serious allegations. Allegations of procuring and engaging in sexual abuse with underage girls alongside Epstein.
staff of 70 to cater to every guest's needs. You can tell who's staff because they're forced to wear black or white polo shirts and they're told to stay out of everybody's view when they're working. Like, don't be seen. Work hidden.
And I don't know if you've had this, but I've had people throw millions of dollars in my face to do something I didn't want to do. And what? Just, you've been off, yeah. Oh, they're in the room.
Yeah, I don't want to.